Jerks. Thinking about the jerk in terms of its properties, it's a pattern, it's a whole body push pattern, so lower body and upper body work together. It's a power, a movement with power. It means speed and strength together. And because of those two things, it is a bit of complexity, but we don't want people to just get stuck on the idea that they're trying to learn an exercise. We're trying to learn how to generate force from our feet and pass it through our body and then out through our hands. That's the goal of working on this. So first way to have people feel this is do what I call a boulder press. So I'm going to rack it on one side here. I'm going to hold it by the belly with my palms, and I'm going to rack it off to the side. So one arm is kind of up and one arm is down. This way, I can use my legs to bump it up and then pass it over to the other side. I'm going to bump and pass. Notice that I'm using my legs, namely my knees, to jump it up and to catch it. I'm not squatting and then slowly bringing it across. I'm bumping and catching. So it should feel springy, and it should make the weight feel light. Bump and press, bump and press. So someone working on that, if they got that feeling of connecting their lower body with their upper body, creating some tension and then passing the power through, just doing that all cycle, awesome, that's wonderful. If they're feeling good with the boulder press, then you can have them move into practicing just bumps. So here, I'm going to take a rack position. I need my arm close to my body. If my arm is winging out here, it's going to be a lot harder to pass my lower body power through. So it has to be a nice tight rack. That can either be on the side or in the front, depending on one's physiology. You make the connection in a way that feels good and natural for you. But the bump is I'm going to do the same thing, but bend my legs, load my springs, load, unload, and that's going to make the bell bump, bump up. So I can practice my reps just like this and not go into full extension. That might also be an option for someone if their shoulder isn't feeling great and they don't want to throw a weight up quickly with speed. So it's a great teaching tool for learning how to transfer the power through. Next would be a push press. So next progression is push press, load, spring to stand. When it comes back down, catch again. I like to raise my heels up as the weight is coming down. Strong ab. Here I'm creating a shelf. I'm presenting my body and then catching it down. I'm not leaning back, but I am presenting my ribs to catch. So I don't want to be in a false neutral here and then try to bring it back down. I'm going to lift my ribs and extend and allow my rack to be presented before the weight comes down to it. And then finally, the full jerk. For those who are ready, and there's no rush to get here. It's practicing the principles, not a rush to win an exercise. But the full jerk has a second dip. So I'm going to bump and sit right afterwards, back up to a stand. Again, catching with my legs. So, first dip, bumps it up. As it's going up, I sit underneath it. It's called the second dip or the under squat. And then I stand up and catch. So, bump, sit, stand, move. So notice that I'm going to bring the weight up to the overhead position into lockout, and then I'm going to move my body, and I'll extend my shoulder a little bit back down before I let it drop. I'm not going to let it drop from way up here down onto my shoulder. Again, I'm going to present my body in the bell, and then it come back down into my rack. So it looks easy when you're looking at it, but I sometimes find this is more difficult to get feeling fluid and connected and smooth than even the snatch. So it's totally fine if this takes some time. People should just spend time feeling that power from the ground passing through their body and up through their arms. Ultimately, you know you're doing a good job of jerking or push pressing if you can put up more weight than you could if you were just strict pressing. So a general rule of thumb is you should be able to push press more than you can press, and you should be able to jerk more than you can push press. After someone's comfortable with the jerk, then there's lots of other things we can do. We can play with, and this probably go beyond teaching in the cycle, but just to show you, we could do things like starting from a split stance and working that, or doing a, adding in a split stance. We could do things playing with wider stances. Doing like an opposite leg, as though I were throwing a punch. I used to do a lot of these when I cared about increasing my punch power. I would set up like I was throwing a punch and even throw a little bit of rotation. So there's different ways of playing with it. I have seen, although I don't love them, where you rotate and then throw. I feel like it adds so much that the bell just gets in the way of the movement. But there's other ways of playing with the movement of the jerk. Lastly, if someone's having a really hard time either shoulder-wise, that's going to be a limitation for some people. They may do just a squat press. So let's take the power out of it. That will reduce complexity. The speed will reduce. Removing the speed will reduce the complexity of the movement. And that person could just do strong abs, a deeper squat, and then a strict press. So if they wanted to just work on that, great bracing, great core strengthening, great stabilization around their shoulder. So we can just go nice and slow. They can make the squat even as deep as they wanted to. Squat and then press. So that's totally fine to do. And the other thing that somebody might do, if they can't get any of that, is something like a medicine ball, throwing a medicine ball up. That might help them feel what it, ultimately the movement is supposed to feel like. This is throwing the weight. We're throwing the weight, not just pressing the weight. So that's a different feeling. And there will be a moment of weightlessness with the weight, just like with the clean and the snatch, and even the swing, a moment of weightlessness that you when you get underneath it. So actually having somebody throw the weight might help them feel that better. Anyway, that's the jerk.